What's up guys and welcome back to another Wynand Crypto video. What I'm about to reveal will completely shatter the biggest lie being spread about XRP, and make sure to watch this video completely until the end because this could change everything for XRP holders. You think you know why people refuse to buy XRP, you think it's about the technology or the lawsuits. Wrong. It's all about one massive misconception that's been destroying XRP's reputation for years. And today, I'm exposing the truth that the crypto elites don't want you to know. Every single time I talk to people outside our XRP community, whether they're Bitcoin maximalists or Ethereum believers, they all say the same thing about why they won't touch XRP. They look me straight in the eye and say, dude, XRP isn't even decentralized. Ripple controls everything through a massive escrow account. Why would I invest in something that's centralized? And you know what? I used to argue back immediately, but then I realized something huge. They're just misinformed, and that misinformation is costing all of us money. So here's what we're actually dealing with when it comes to Ripple's escrow situation. We're talking about approximately 36.5 billion XRP that's currently locked up in escrow out of the total 99.98 billion XRP that will ever exist. Now before you start panicking about those numbers, let me show you something incredible. Watch this. We can actually track every single escrow wallet in real time. This isn't some secret operation happening behind closed doors. Everything is transparent, everything is visible, and everything is trackable. When you scroll through these wallets, you will see the biggest ones are clearly labeled as Ripple wallets. There's no hiding, no deception, no smoke and mirrors. It's all right there for anyone to verify. Now here's where things get really interesting, and this is where I need you to pay close attention because this could change everything. Yes, Ripple holds a significant amount of XRP in escrow, but here's what the critics don't understand and what even some XRP holders don't fully grasp. This escrow system actually proves that XRP is decentralized, not centralized. Why? Because it's locked. It's not like Ripple can just wake up tomorrow morning and dump 36 billion XRP onto the market. There are strict mechanisms in place, smart contracts that govern exactly how and when these tokens can be released. We've covered this topic multiple times on this channel, even breaking down explanations from David Schwartz himself. And Brad Garlinghouse has been crystal clear about this. XRP operates on a completely decentralized network regardless of who holds the tokens. But here is where the story takes a massive turn, and this is coming from someone who actually understands the strategy behind what Ripple is doing. Anderson puts it perfectly. Ripple having large XRP holdings is a feature, not a bug. Think about this logically for a second. If Ripple holds 0 XRP or just a tiny amount, what incentive would they have to push for XRP adoption? What reason would they have to choose XRP over any other blockchain? The answer is simple, they wouldn't. Look at the Ethereum ecosystem. Why do you think all these Ethereum influencers and developers push so hard for Ethereum adoption? Because they're holding massive bags. Same thing with Michael Saylor and Bitcoin. Do you really think he'd be out there every single day promoting Bitcoin if he didn't have billions invested in it? Of course not. Having skin in the game is what creates the strongest incentive for success. Now here is where this gets absolutely mind-blowing, and I want you to listen carefully because this comes straight from someone who used to work at Ripple. Watch this former Ripple employee explain exactly why Ripple's large XRP holdings are massively beneficial for everyone.
We own 60 billion XRP, the company. Okay. I don't know that Bitcoin or Ethereum is that much more decentralized in terms of holdings. Right? I think Vitalik has a fair bit of Ethereum, right? So does Joe Lubin. The early Bitcoiners have tons, right? I saw some study the other day that like 90% of the holdings are 10% of the wallets in Bitcoin and Ethereum, some crazy thing like that. So it's a little more private, right? I think ours is a little more public, especially because the company holds so much. What I would say is it puts us in a very interesting position with respect to economics, because number one, so my job, building liquidity, one of the ways you do that is you lend XRP to people so that they can provide liquidity in markets. You want to provide a bid and an offer in the market, you have to have cash to buy something. And if you want to sell it, you have to have the thing to sell. Well, the only way you sell something is either own it or you borrow it. In the Bitcoin space, it's really hard to borrow stuff. It's expensive, 10 to 15% annual interest rates, and it's hard to find really chunky loans. With SRP, people can just come to us and be like, hey, I want to borrow some SRP. Not anybody, but really professional market makers. It's something that we can do that nobody else can do, right? In that flow that I described where somebody's buying XRP, moving it and selling it, we can guarantee the rates. So everybody always asks me, like, well, but you're bridging between two fiat currencies. Like, you have to do two hops, there's two spreads you're crossing, the liquidity's not great, it's volatile. No problem. you're going across this rail and it's expensive, I am very much incentivized to make sure that you do that, because the more liquidity, the more utility, in theory, over time, the more valuable XRP will be. So in the short run, we're very much incentivized to make all those frictions go away. So I don't see our holdings as a detriment, and I definitely do not care if there are skeptics. We're skeptics about everything. But it puts us in an incredibly powerful position to actually activate these.
Now let me address the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. If we're going to call XRP centralized because of Ripple's holdings, then we need to have the same conversation about Bitcoin and Ethereum. Look at Bitcoin. The main centralization concerns revolve around mining companies, and guess what? Almost all the major mining companies have the same top shareholders: BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. MicroStrategy, one of the largest Bitcoin holders, also has the same institutional investors as major shareholders. Now with Bitcoin ETFs, we have massive players like BlackRock and Fidelity controlling enormous amounts of Bitcoin. Could we argue that Bitcoin is centralized based on these facts? Let me know in the comments below. And you guys, I have a special trick for you, which nobody seems to be using, and I cannot wrap my head around why. Because if you sign up through my link down in the description onto the BTCC exchange, you get a 10% deposit bonus, and now stay with me here. Now here comes the important part. If you have any trading capital on any other exchange and you move it to your newly created BTCC account, you get, on top of your capital you moved, another 10% extra trading capital. As an example, so if you move or deposit 100k to your account, you get 10k for free. I'm not kidding. I really don't understand why nobody's doing this. To me, it really seems like people sometimes are too lazy or just don't like free money. I mean, like, I cannot make that account for you. You will need to do that yourself, alright? So let's jump back into the video. Now here's something that just came out that's absolutely incredible. Let's watch SBI shareholder presentation. Listen to this.
Ripple Lab is held as unlisted shares. The value of XRP held in Escrow by Ripple Lab will not be included in the corporate value until a clear valuation is determined through an IPO or other means. If it is included, the profit will surge and will be an extraordinary amount. So assets under management for private equity was approximately 900 billion. We would like to bring it close to 1 trillion as soon as possible for the crypto asset business. Like mentioned earlier, this is a record high in performance. Ever since Mr. Trump was inaugurated, the U.S. has been putting a lot of emphasis on the crypto asset market, which we are grateful for. The reason why we did invest into Ripple more than 10 years ago, which is now generating a huge amount of unrealized profits. If listed, the unrealized profits are going to be unlocked, and I'm sure that it will easily exceed 1 trillion yen. So this is something that may happen. I thought it was a little too early to advance into these segments, but it wasn't. There aren't as many people who understand our operations. Even our employees do not understand our entire business. So maybe general investors do not understand our business perfectly.
It's been a long time since we have invested in a company called Ripple, maybe 10 years. So what is happening to this investment? This is now generating enormous amount of profit. XRP is a currency issued by Ripple. Market cap right now, so XRP is circulating in the market, is about 20 trillion yen now. So this is 58.55 billion XRP, which is equivalent to 20 trillion in market cap. And there are still currently Ripple's holdings are not in circulation. That's still under escrow. This is how much. It's right here. So we have about a little less than 10% of the equity stake of Ripple.
They revealed that the value of XRP held in escrow by Ripple Labs will not be included in their corporate valuation until there's a clear valuation determined through an IPO or other means. But here's the crazy part. They're generating massive unrealized profits from their Ripple investment that they made over 10 years ago. When they talk about these numbers, they're estimating that if this gets unlocked through a public listing, the unrealized profits could easily exceed 1 trillion yen. SBI holds approximately 10% of Ripple's equity, and they're basically sitting on a gold mine that hasn't even been properly valued yet. Now here's where this story gets absolutely wild, and this connects to something much bigger happening in the crypto space right now. Watch this explanation about how the US government uses strategic reserves.
Candidate Trump talked about was his frustration with the Biden administration that after they'd seize the crypto, they'd sell the crypto. And he said, look, had they held on to the crypto, we would have billions of dollars that we could use to pay down government debt and otherwise. So he complained that government shouldn't be selling seized crypto. That raises then two issues: crypto stockpiles and crypto reserves. And they have a slight different connotation. Since the beginning of time, we know, going back to ancient Egypt, governments have been stockpiling commodities. Ancient Egypt stockpiled wheat and corn. Today, governments like the United States, like China, stockpile an enormous amount of commodities. China stockpiles pork, stockpiles rebar, stockpiles copper, stockpiles petroleum. The United States stockpiles and reserves petroleum. So governments do this with commodities all the time. They do it for various purposes. The simple one is simply in times of need, they can release the stockpile and it can be used by citizens. But they also use it for strategic purposes. The United States petroleum stockpile is more than a stockpile. It's actually a reserve. And here's where a reserve is different than a stockpile. It's used for strategic purposes. We use our petroleum stockpile to actually adjust the world price of petroleum. We buy and sell to affect the global price. The Biden administration sold down our petroleum reserve dramatically to attempt to bring down the price of oil running into the last election. Since the dollar is in part based upon the global price, there's also a monetary impact. And that's why the Trump administration has says we are going to stockpile different currencies, different cryptos, but we're going to reserve Bitcoin. And the reason why we're going to reserve and use Bitcoin strategically for monetary policy purposes is because a number of countries have announced they are going to experiment with a new digital currency that's based upon Bitcoin. And so by having a reserve, we now have both an offensive and defensive capability to protect the dollar in a new global digital world. So it shows a lot of strategic thinking and also recognition that Bitcoin is moved into the realm of being having monetary policy impact. You know, from the beginning of history, most currencies have been stabilized with a commodity. Often that commodity is a metal commodity, silver or gold. It's only in the last 50 years or so, since the United States went off the gold standard in the 1970s, that the United States has experimented with having a true fiat currency not anchored to any commodity. Now, some commentators will argue that no, the dollar still remains based upon a petroleum commodity, but it's still a physical commodity. When in 2017, as chairman of the CFTC, I greenlighted the world's first Bitcoin futures, we were focused on the fact that in the future, commodities, not just physical commodities, but in fact, digital commodities may become anchors for currencies. And I wanted to make sure that the global Bitcoin price was set in dollars, not in any other currency, because the time may come when once again we return to a commodity stabilizer for our money, but this time around that commodity may be a digital commodity, not a physical commodity.
Just like the US uses petroleum stockpiles to adjust global oil prices, there's a possibility that crypto could be used in similar strategic ways. The government can buy and sell from these reserves to affect global prices, giving them both offensive and defensive capabilities. Now here's the connection to XRP that nobody's talking about. If XRP becomes part of a strategic stockpile, the US government could technically use that XRP, just like they use petroleum, to adjust world prices and set specific price levels. This could be weaponized in the sense that it gives the US significant control over global XRP liquidity and pricing. We know they're not currently buying more digital assets for the stockpile, but that could change over time. There is even a possibility that Ripple could gift XRP to the US government, which would be an incredible strategic move. There's even a possibility that Ripple could gift XRP to the US government, which would be an incredible strategic move. David Schwartz has addressed questions about whether banks adopting Ripple would want to keep XRP prices low, and this answer is absolutely fascinating. He explains that the price you need to make a $1 million payment will always be at least $1 million worth of XRP, but here's the key insight. Higher prices actually correlate with higher liquidity, which means cheaper payments. A higher priced asset is actually a better vehicle for payments, especially for high value transactions. This completely destroys the argument that banks would want to suppress XRP's price. The misconceptions about centralization are just that, misconceptions, and the people spreading these misconceptions are either misinformed or deliberately trying to suppress XRP's growth because they see it as a threat to their own investments. Look, I get it, there's a lot of information out there, and some of it challenges what you might have heard before, but that's exactly why I make these videos, to cut through the noise and give you the real facts. The bottom line is this: Ripple's escrow is not a bug, it's a feature. It's not centralization, it's strategic positioning, and it's not a threat to XRP's future, it's the foundation of XRP's success. If you found this video valuable, if it changed your perspective on XRP, or if it helped you understand something you didn't know before, then smash the like button right now. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you will never miss our latest XRP analysis. I read every single comment and I love hearing your thoughts. Thanks for watching XRP Army. Until the next time, keep stacking and keep believing. Wynand Crypto out.